Over to you, Alexey and Louise, finding peace in the middle of chaos. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. Yeah, so you're going to be able to mute everybody, can you, Angela? So I don't have the skills. Just in here. But thank you so much.
I'm going to mute everyone, but you and Alexey might have to unmute yourselves again.
Oh, right, okay.
Everyone was muted anyway, I think, apart from yourself, Angela. So that's cool. And
you just be muted, Stephen. While you, but I really. Can you hear me? Okay, give thumbs up. Right. Okay, great stuff. And Maggie's just said in the chat, apologies, I'm just joining you. Don't worry, Maggie. It's great to have you here. So this is lovely. So came up with the idea for this in the last XR Regeneration and Wellbeing meeting. And it was, the idea is because we're living in such a full-on time that I think some people are very, very high levels of stress have become completely normalized. And it's just being aware and being mindful of that. So finding peace in the middle of chaos, we thought that would be a good subject and a good thing to discuss this evening. So yeah, Angela's introduced me. I'm very interested in the relationship between nature and mental health, because I think my relationship with nature has brought me incredible peace over the last few years. And I just think it's a natural resource and a constant source of well-being that many of us are not maybe aware of. So we'll be talking a bit more about that. Is there anything you'd like to say, Alexey, before we look at the first slide?
I think it's something that's just going to become increasingly important. You know, I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of people in the room here are concerned about climate, and we're all affected by, you know, COVID, and we've all learned that COVID's not an overnight thing, and the impact of that, especially in terms of people's mental health, is going to, you know, long-term implications. So, you know, I think how we deal with the situation and having strategies to help us find some peace in the midst of all of that can only be a good thing. So yeah, I think it's timely.
Yes, yeah, and we're both very much on the same page about the relationship with nature. So we'll go on to the first and we'll look a bit more thinking about the time that we're living in. So can you all see that okay? Just thumbs up if you can. Yeah, lovely. Right, so so the first slide, you know, being XR, we're interested in the environment and climate, what's happening in the climate emergency and the mass extinction. So I use two images, like see no climate change, hear no climate change, speak no climate change. And then the second image, actually, I just think, you know, a lot of people are, I think it's very, very, very powerful, because a lot of people, you know, you've got the three waves and the smallest one is COVID. Because everybody's like, this is the emergency. And we're like, right, okay, yes, COVID's shocking. And then people are like, actually, what's about to come once we've come out of this state of almost paralysis? So it's moved. There was pretty much complete societal paralysis for a while at the start of 2020 when things are starting moving, but we're starting to see the ongoing effect of COVID and the recession. Right, but when you're talking about recessions, you're aware of like the capitalism and the capitalist element, and then the biggest wave is climate change, and it's the one that most people are in complete denial of. Now, I'm aware that the bubble you're looking at with on the land or the city is very hard to read. So what the bubble says is, be sure to wash your hands and all will be well. And those images are kind of what they're saying is, you know, yes, we've got several things, several big catastrophes, emergencies playing out at the same time. And sometimes a lot of the population are focusing on the immediate one that's immediately impacting them. Whereas these other ones are going to come and they're going to be huge. And we know that anybody connected with Extinction Rebellion, anybody aware of the science, anybody aware of what, you know, the IPCC report 2018, you know, keeping up to date, we're all aware of climate change. Sadly, we're very much in the minority, it would seem. So with being aware and being conscious of all of this, you know, sometimes you'd be like, how do you find peace in the middle of this? And this is what we will be looking at and talking about today. Alexey?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I've been thinking about recently is, you know, I mean, you're probably first of all conscious about the impact of all of this on yourself, and that's something to be, you know, to be aware of. But the impact of this on those around us, and then the additional drain that then comes with actually looking after those that are around us as well, is an additional burden. So it's a kind of, you know, in the same way that I suppose the cartoon suggests, it's a cumulative thing. You know, the more people become affected by this, you know, the more it drains the people around them as well. So you know, there can be a kind of multiplier effect there. So again, it's, you know, it's good to think about this in terms of yourself, but also in terms of helping others to find peace as well. So it's a kind of two-way thing, hopefully, and hopefully those around us are aware of it and can help us as well.
Absolutely. So then let me see if I can get this right. So when thinking about the opposite of peace, I often think about stress and the word stress. And stress is something that, like, we ask you to describe stress and what you see as stressful and write in the chat. Like, how would you describe it? For me, sometimes I think overwhelm. But, you know, it'll have all types of associations. So you want to write anything how you would describe stress, and put it in the chat. That would be lovely. Feeling overwhelmed and anxious, loss of control, not being able to manage the situation. Yes. Loss of control. Too many balls in the air. Yep. Tension. Mm-hmm. Head tight and unable to rest. Isolating. Head tight and unable to rest. So it's it can feel like a physical thing as well as a mental, emotional thing. Noticing the feeling of stress in the physical body recently. Yes, I don't know if any of you have heard of the book, The Body Holds a Score. And The Body Speaks the Mind's another one. But yes, I would associate it with mental stress. And then sometimes whenever I go in, actually listen to, like, feel around my shoulders and my head particularly, I would hold a lot of stress and tension in my upper back and neck, all around there. So as I got older, I've become more aware of where I hold the stress. And then in the last few years being more and more aware of stress, I've been able to focus right and getting stressed. What can I do? Like, that's one thing I've really missed. Like, there's times during the lockdown and stuff, I go, oh my God, I'd love a deep tissue massage. You can't live and get it. You can't, you know, so it's like things like that there. But yes, the body holds, totally, yes. But the body holds a lot of stress. And I remember a few years ago, before I really got into a lot of well-being practices and really learned a lot about this, my lower back used to go. And that would, like, take me out for a few days. You know, the body sends you messages. The body, it whispers, and then it starts shouting, and then it screams. And then often when it screams, it, you know, something breaks or something goes and you're bedridden. So these are really, really good answers. Anything you want to say, Alexey?
Yeah, well, I recently did training as a mental health first aider. And one of the things I learnt on that course was that within mental health and within mental illness, stress actually isn't a diagnosable condition, but it is one of the main contributory factors to different forms of mental illness. So I found that quite interesting. But it is, I mean, stress-related mental health or mental illness is the leading cause of absence from work. It costs the economy a huge amount of money, let alone the toll on, on our own well-being and our own ability to function. So, it costs us individually, but it costs us collectively, a lot. And it's on the increase because of because of everything that's going on. So yeah, I think that's
yeah, but it's completely subjective, because what might stress you out or one person out might not stress another out. You see what I mean? Some people are not stressed at all about climate change. Some people are experiencing extreme climate anxiety and extreme climate stress. So that's another thing about stress. It's very, very difficult to measure. Science doesn't deal well, medicine doesn't deal well with things they can't quantify. So with stress being such a subjective phenomenon, such a really difficult to nail down thing, they can't, you're right. And it's stress has always been around. It's a way of alerting you, and we're going to talk about that too. But actually, in the modern world, it's become much more of a health issue. So let's see. So how is stress useful? Do you want to lead with this one, Alex? So I'm not always. Do you want to lead with this one?
Yes, Shirley. Yep. So I suppose one of the suppose messages that would maybe runs through quite a few of the things we were talking about today is how we view things, and stress doesn't always have to be viewed as a negative thing. So being able to frame stress as actually a useful thing in our lives can actually help it be a bit lighter to carry. So some of the ways that we've just listed here, that stress can, in the right amounts, can be useful. It can give us the motivation to actually do things. It can increase your level of awareness and alertness. It can be a sign that you have compassion and that you care about things. It's also almost always some sort of alarm bell that something's wrong. So it's alerting us to some danger or some threat, and that's a good thing, because once we're aware of it, we can do something about it. So it's very important from that point of view as well. And yes, I mean, in terms of the alertness, it heightens our awareness and makes us more aware of things that are happening, and hopefully draws our attention to maybe what's actually causing them. So I suppose that's the thing, trying to frame things not always in a negative way, but in a positive way. So seeing the positive sides of stress and appreciating stress in the right amounts can be a positive way of looking at it. Is I think what we were
Yeah.
we were looking to say. Louise, would you add to that?
Oh yeah, it is a healthy, it's a way of knowing that you're alive to the world around you and what's happening, and you are alert to what's going on. So I think that's, it can be very, very useful. And then the next one, so then we were looking at, when does it become unhealthy? And this is basically, we're seeing, how do you know when it's unhealthy? We're seeing quite unhealthy stress responses with regards to COVID, with regards to the last year. You're starting to notice, well, we're aware our society is very, very stressed. People, their businesses, their work situations, their family, I'm seeing more and more people affected directly by the pandemic. And I notice, like, whenever there's grief and stress and all of it mixed together, I notice quite high levels of anger and tension and overwhelm. And this is when these are quite natural responses. And this is a very, very full-on situation that many of are living in, but it can lead to ill health. So anxiety, depression, burnout, adrenal fatigue, aches, pains, tension, overwhelm, tiredness and exhaustion. And overwhelm, I often think of it in terms of just, that's when people, we're talking about, psychological breakdowns and things like that, so it's a very important thing, I think, in terms of well-being, to be able to monitor your stress levels and to be aware of yourself and your limits. And that's what I really, really hope a lot of people take away from this chat today. Being mindful, like, of where your stress levels are, and then putting like self-care things, as techniques in place to just look after yourself. So yeah, that's how do we know when it is unhealthy? Alexey, do you want to add anything to that?
No, it was just interesting that the people's answers in the chat to the first question mirror a lot of the things that that people put there. So in terms of being isolated, overwhelmed, anxious, loss of control, not being able to manage. So I think what people put in the chat links nicely with the list of I suppose symptoms of too much stress that we've listed there.
Yeah, and Stephen's asked in the chat, how does adrenal fatigue manifest itself? Which is a really good question. Adrenals and things like that, you're talking about, I would say, I think it's like chronic fatigue. Thank you, Susan. Yes. And it's also, I would say, you're more susceptible to getting ill. The adrenals will be exhausted, then you'll be more susceptible to viruses and infections and colds and the like, and you'll just be lethargic and exhausted. So it would be very surprising, actually, if people didn't have some adrenal fatigue because of the last year, I think. What do you think, Alexey?
Yes, I think it's about the length of time which we experience stress. So occasional stress can be a normal, well, is a normal part of life, and is potentially a good thing, to experience stress occasionally, or but it's when it's all of the time, when there's no escape from experiencing that stress, and your body's then producing adrenaline all the time.
Yeah.
And it just exhausts the body, and it obviously isn't healthy to be experiencing stress all of the time. So that's why it's so important to have approaches and mechanisms to create periods with with less stress or without stress, to break it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll come on to.
Okay, let's see. So the importance of acknowledging and honoring our stress. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Alexey? Because in our chat last week, you were saying about this, and I think it's really important.
Okay, so I suppose the one of the things that I feel is important around stress is acknowledging it and honoring it, and by that what I mean is accepting that it's there. Now, accepting that it's there is different from not wanting to do something about it. But if you are able to, accept the fact that the situation is as it is at the moment, and drop your resistance to that, and then that releases an energy that can then be applied to actually addressing the problem. And if you are able to drop your resistance to, whatever the situation is that's causing you the stress, and just accept it in that particular moment as being what's happening, it then puts you in a much better position to be able to then deal with it. But if you're still resisting something being the way it is, it reduces the energy and creativity that you have to actually, to tackle the problem. So I suppose, acknowledging and honouring something that's causing you stress creates, hopefully creates some space around it, within which, you can then think about and apply your own creativity to try and address the cause of that stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I work as a counsellor and life coach, right? And every client I have always says, you're going to think, well, you're going to think I'm mad for being stressed about this. And I always think, no, because if it stresses you out, it stresses you out. But the more I think sometimes people try and push it away and go, oh no, I'm just being a bit mad, they're denying it. Whereas if you go, right, okay, I'm stressed. You know, my mother-in-law is coming next week, or, you know, just acknowledge that, because then you can process it and you can work with it. When you're trying to bury things a lot, I just think sometimes it can bite you in the bum if you don't work on it. You know, you don't try and work on it and you keep pushing it to the side. So well, that's something that I've noticed in doing my work, that people often feel silly about the things that they find very stressful, but that's it. That's the beauty of us all being different. Different things will, you know, have an impact on us. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean it's not worth, you know, being honest about, I suppose.
Yeah, I think one of the other things is, you know, when you acknowledge, you know, the stress or even the symptoms that the stress is causing you in terms of tension or, you know, anxiety, you know, actually acknowledging those things is the first step towards addressing them. Because until you've acknowledged them, you're in denial. So that can make them light to carry. And some people would say, you know, that anything that causes you, you know, any amount of pain or stress, that there's, if you can find it possible to, I suppose, try and find a purpose for that pain, you know, because that pain may have a purpose. It may be telling you something really important. And so that you can almost become grateful for that pain because it's actually told you something that you actually really needed to know. Whereas if you ignore it, you're ignoring what it's trying to tell you. So I suppose, you know, the concept of there being, you know, purpose within pain can again make it kind of lighter to carry.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's very, like, would be like a spiritual element, wouldn't it? And I think that's the thing, a lot of this and the nature connection and stuff, it's like a transcendence quality, you know, it's about connecting, I suppose, sometimes with society, cultures, family, expectations, what you're going through. Sometimes if you can see it from a different angle or think about it from a completely different perspective, you know, it can bring you some peace. So this peace is it does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. And freedom from disturbance, quiet, and tranquility. So this is what this workshop, like this session, is looking at. It's like, how can you find peace in the middle of absolute mayhem? And I think that's why we're going to be talking a bit more about what people, and we want to hear from people in the session, like, what is it that you do to find it? Because I know you can find peace, like, and that's in the middle of pretty much any situation, because that's what the whole premise of what mindfulness is about, and what a lot of self-care techniques and different things that we do look after ourselves, it's basically calming things down and bringing us into the present moment. And Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy looks at that. You know, some in this, they might be familiar with the likes of Joanna Macy, the work that connects and things like that. It's all talking about a level of acceptance and the possibility that you can pretty much find peace in the middle of anywhere. And that would be a lot of, like, you know, Ram Dass and things, people like that would be talking about, like, enlightenment and consciousness. But the idea of peace being always within us, no matter what the circumstances, is something that I think is very important to bear in mind. When you think of any, like, mindfulness, I think is a reflective of prayer, you know, and meditation and things like that. So peace for me is something that we carry around with us, but we often forget because of the stresses of modern life and living. What do you think, Alexey?
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I would think about peace in a similar way that I would think about silence, in that people often think of both of those things as a kind of emptiness, as a kind of nothingness. Peace is nothing happening, silence is no sound. But if you can think about these two things, in a different way, and think of them as having substance, so that peace actually is something. There's something within peace. But if you can connect with it, it can become a nourishing peace. And again, with silence, silence is always there. As Louise said, peace is always there. Silence is always there underneath all of the noise. And even if you can't hear the silence, it's still there. And again, I think there's something within silence which can be very, very nourishing as well. And it's not because there's nothing there. It's because there's something there, but you can't become aware of it until you quieten out the noise. So it's the idea that this is a nourishing, that peace can be something that once you connect with it, it can nourish you, and it can be a nourishing experience. So
oh, absolutely.
it's something, not nothing.
And Maggie's written, peace of mind is central to mental health and well-being. Absolutely. And peace of mind is priceless. You can't buy it. So we're looking a bit more at that. Let's see. So what decreases your peace? Right? So anybody want to fire in the chat there? What decreases your peace?
You don't even want to say it.
Too much to do. Too much to do is wrecked, yeah. What society norms? Yeah. Societal expectations, society norms. Too much Zoom. Try to say something, Alexey. Everything overlapping. Oh my God, yeah. If my diary is too full, it really, really stresses me out. Putting too much pressure on self. Yep. Lack of sleep. I remember having a client, right? And I remember she had everything, ticked all the boxes, right? But she was very, very stressed and exhausted. And I was like, right, what is it that you want? And she said to me, I want you to give me an extra hour sleep. Right? I need an extra hour sleep. But she wasn't willing to change anything else. So her body was screaming with stress, but she wasn't willing for anything to go. But it was all there was too much going on in her. Do you see what I mean? And once sleep goes, it's very, very difficult. Being interested in too many things. Yes, I would be my own procrastination. Not looking after my own mental health, physical health. Yes. So that decreases your peace. Would you say that things that decrease, whenever you think about decreasing peace, is it directly, do you think that relationship between increase in stress and decrease in peace is completely connected? Do you think they're the opposite of each other? Stressful work, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that decrease our peace, but again, there always will be. Peace isn't a permanent state of being. It's a fluctuating thing. So peace will always, as with stress, hopefully will fluctuate. So again, it's about seeing, trying to reframe those things that do decrease your peace and seeing them as things that are. And I suppose going back to the previous slide about the definition of peace, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to it is the kind of key to the peace. So being aware of what decreases your peace is very important, because then you can think about how to respond to that the next time it happens.
Absolutely. So I think rest rather than peace is the opposite of stress. Very good. Yep. I would associate rest with peace a lot, but that's really interesting. And like you said, those things are subjective, Siobhan says, to every person, as well as they look different to everyone. And deadlines and not knowing what outcomes will be. That's from Maggie. So that's about what decreases your peace. So what increases your peace? I personally, water and doing things like water and baths and showers and being near water is actually there. I live in Mid-Ulster, but every so often I need to get near the sea. I need to get water for me too. Yes, I need to get near a beach or a river or something like that. That for me, that helps increases my peace. That's when I'm thinking more when I'm close to burnout or something. I'm like, nah, there needs to be a big dose of like just really, really taking things slow. No screens. Water for me too. No screen. For me, it's painting or drawing or reading. Lovely. No screens. Right. Yes, that's a very important one to be aware of. Screens, because our lives are, particularly at the moment, there's a lot of screens and Zooms. The mountains for me, lovely. Mountains. It's funny. I love mountains, but I'm not as connected. There's a lot of people I know they need to get to the mountains, but I'm by the sea or water and forests. Birds murmuring, lovely. Taking on getting lost. Recognizing small pleasures, wonderful. So this is about what increases your peace, and you see a lot of these are nature, or well, no screens. Often screens and technology is considered the antidote. The antidote to that is nature and completely natural green surrounding stuff. So what increases your peace, Alexey?
Yeah, it's interesting how, you know, people migrate towards different habitats. So for some people it's the coast.
Yes.
For some people it's the mountains that really do it for them. I'm a man of the woods. That's what really does it for me. So so when it snowed there, just where I've moved to, there's trees out the back of ours and a bit of woodland, and we went out and it was just like Narnia. Oh my goodness, it was just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. So trees through the seasons, that does it for me.
Oh, I love trees so much. I love being around them, and that's, I love there's more research and the connections. Like, it's interesting as an environmentalist, I find it very interesting, that tree hugging and all that there, see, it's an insult and weird, because I think we've such a symbiotic relationship, like we have a completely symbiotic relationship with trees. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's a very beautiful relationship, but most people have been cut off from it and disconnected with their relationship with nature. But once you are aware of that relationship and that constant, and actually how nature restores us, it's well known to reduce stress levels. It's well, there's scientific empirical evidence behind that. This is what I hope. Well, sure. I think we're just preaching to the converted, though. I think everybody is a nature lover.
I like Siobhan's comment there about something else for me is being around people I love and care about.
Yes.
I think an important element of that as well is, thinking about the previous slide of what decreases your peace. And often it can be people and what they say and what they do. But sometimes those very people can be the people who can also really, really increase our peace as well. So, so again, it's about gratitude. It's, sometimes the things that decrease our peace at other times will increase it.
Yes.
Again, it's a way of practicing gratitude and appreciating things which don't always bring us peace, but then on other occasions can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gratitude, we didn't actually put in this. That's a brilliant. That's really, really good for well-being and self-care, practicing gratitude and being aware of it. And Stephen's written a wee holiday and having a laugh, dispel stress. That's Maggie. Yeah. Oh, having a good laugh is great crack. A wee holiday, we can dream, can't we? Don't know when that's going to be happening. But you know what? We walk in the woods, or we walk, you know, out in the fields or out in the countryside. So we're looking at things. So the next few will be looking at things directly, bringing peace. Music. There are three things that I think are our greatest healers, or are really things that make, I think, my life a lot better. One of them's music. I adore music. Anybody else want to add in the chats? Music. Now, I was thinking about this earlier. Peace. I enjoy music, but I don't know if a lot of people listening to the music I listen to would bring them a lot of peace, because I would be quite funky house music a lot of the time, and I enjoy dancing, and I just enjoy listening to lots of different music. But that brings me joy. That really lifts the soul. I have to say, I've just joined a choir. Well done, Stephen.
Yep.
That's very good for the soul, I think, choirs. Very good.
It's very interesting. When I worked in Scotland, and I worked in quite a lot of schools, doing like school ground projects and wildlife gardens. And there was one particular teacher who I worked with, and she had a fantastic technique of whenever she felt the tension levels rising within the class, she'd just start singing songs that all the children know, and all the children would have to join in.
Yes.
Or would just join in, and it just changed the dynamic immediately. I think singing is one of the most sort of underused things in youth work, in children's work, in play work, in community work. Singing is such a powerful thing, especially done collectively. You know, whether it's on the football terraces or in the big people's choir in Belfast, you know, it's such a powerful thing, singing. So
yes,
I'm definitely with you on that one. It can be a really, really powerful tool.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people walking around thinking they're rubbish at singing, and stopping themselves from singing because they were rejected from choirs at primary school. That really gets my nerves. I don't think you should be rejected from a choir as a child.
Yeah. This is my biggest objection to the X Factor. You know, I don't think people, you know, because people get, you know, ridiculed and laughed at for not being able to sing very well, you know, and that kills me every time I see it, because, you know, it doesn't matter if you know, I can't sing to save myself. I used to busk in Edinburgh, but I didn't sing because I don't have a particularly good singing voice. But I had a harmonica and a guitar, so you know, so it worked. But just, you know, I mean, I did used to use a lot of singing in play work and children's work that I used to do, and it doesn't matter that I can't hold a tune, you know, because songs can be used to raise energy levels, bring energy levels down, create inclusion, you know. It's just a fantastic tool. So
yeah, and we've got people sharing their choir trauma stories in the chat. I was told to mime in school choir, right? That's disgraceful, Maggie. You sing your heart out, and I got kicked out of mine. Well, that's there you go. So people getting kicked out of school choirs, because who owns singing? Nobody owns singing. You know what I mean? It's for everybody. So then art creativity is another one. I've done something recently which I would highly recommend. I bought an art journal, and it's every day. It's like a diary, and there's a blank page every day to just do. And I've been doodling and just messing about. Now, I didn't do art GCSE. I have no art training at all. I just use it as like a kind of stress and an expressive, stress relief and an expression thing. I also thought like the artist's way, I don't know, some people might be familiar with it. It's really good for unleashing creativity, because a lot of us, again, might have been told we weren't artists, or we weren't good at art, or we weren't good at writing, or so that sometimes blocks people and stops people from expressing themselves and just getting involved with writing for therapeutic and for fun and things like that. And I will say that I think it's one of the most powerful things in terms of stress relief and in terms of processing stressful things. It's just writing and expressing yourself, or doodling and things like that. So if people are interested in maybe connecting with their creativity and getting that, the Artist Way is a very good program, or a very good program for doing that. So yes, Alexey.
Yeah, I think I mean I would like to believe in an amateur society, so this relates as much to art as it does to singing. So I think the idea that we become professionals at things, it becomes a barrier then to other people doing these things. So exactly what you were saying there, Louise, about it's like me not being able to sing. You don't consider yourself a fine artist, but you still enjoy art.
I love it.
So I
Yeah.
think an amateur society, there's a lot to be said for it. But when it comes to creative, I think of that in terms of creating things. So I don't consider myself an artist, but I do consider myself, I suppose, somebody who creates things in wood. So I don't see myself as an artist, but I derive a lot from creating things. And I think because my particular field is woodwork, and because it involves quite sharp tools and sometimes dangerous tools, you have to really concentrate on what you're doing to avoid hurting yourself, as well as making sure you actually do and have the effect you want to have. So if you're carving something, you have to be really in the moment. So activities like art and sculpture and craft, that you have to concentrate really well to actually do the thing that you're setting out to do, brings you into the moment and removes your mind from the past and from the future, brings you right into the moment. And this is where a lot of art therapy, or the kind of basis of art therapy, would come into play and cross over with the whole area of mindfulness. There's also recently, I suppose, publicity being given to a concept called craftivism, where people use their creativity in their activism. So where you can combine, the therapeutic side of art and creativity with actually having an impact in relation to, the issues that you're trying to address. You've got a win-win situation. So I love the concept of craftivism. I can't remember the name. There's a lady gave a great talk on Radio 4 about it not that long ago. That gave some really great examples of where, instead of sending somebody, a list of a petition, they sent them a piece of art which symbolized the issue that they were, that they were trying to draw attention to. And it had a much bigger impact on the person who received it than another petition, which they had a dozen of already. So anyway, yeah, so.
Excellent. I think Linda's just said, heard about a good documentary coming on BBC, Craftivism Making a Difference. And then Siobhan said, something I tell young people I work with is that even if someone tells them that their art or music or creativity is not good, it doesn't matter, because it matters how it makes them feel, no one else. Brilliant. I do lots of drama workshops in my work. Stephen says, and I always feel so great afterwards. Hopefully the groups do too. Lovely. Creativity, I think, is really, really good for us. And I think, I just think sometimes somebody saying to somebody that they're not good at something they can believe it very, very quickly. One person's opinion can make people, it can completely influence the course of like their creative life, which I think is, sometimes we give people's opinions a bit too much weight. So then nature and peace, the pace of nature, just spending time in nature, watching, listening to the birds, things like that. All of these, I think, come back to the music, the art, the nature. They all come back to taking the time to be in the now. And that's what happens when I'm in nature, walking my dogs, or I actually sometimes go to my local forest and I've got a hammock and I get put my hammock up and bring a canister of tea and I just chill out and read a book. And I mean, that's something I've started doing the last year, and I cannot recommend that enough. It's just brilliant, like forest bathing, things like that. But it's just taking the time to really just enjoy the surroundings and the bird song and everything like that. And great idea. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
I think that mad woman's going in the woods again with her hammock. Be damned. I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, Susan, you can blame me if you get reported. Yep. But yeah, I would recommend, like, I do really enjoy doing that, especially if I'm feeling pretty frazzled. Go and it's a very regenerative, restorative effect.
Yeah. Now, I know there's people in the room who will probably identify with this and be able to talk about it a lot more than I will, because I haven't really done it that much. But the recent growth in open air swimming and freshwater swimming and sea swimming, I think is another reflection of really immersing yourself in nature. You know, you can't get more immersive than diving into that icy water. I mean, you really know you're there. You're really in the moment.
Angela does it all the time.
So yeah, I mean, I've seen Angela's posts about it. So that's a really powerful example of how nature, you know, and I was going to talk about the I suppose the thinking I put into Angela mentioned the wild wellness walks that I'd be involved in delivering through my current day job with groups of young people and youth workers. So if you've got the next slide there, and I'll just...
Is it the one that you wanted?
is that okay?
Yeah, there it is. That one.
Yes, okay. So, so I'll just put this up, and I'll explain why I put this up. This is a necklace with 5 rings on it. So yesterday when I was working out what I was going to say about the wild wellness walks, it all because it revolves around the number 5. So there's 3 sets of 5s that I try and incorporate into my wild wellness walks. And just as I was writing all of this down, my daughter walked in the room to show me a necklace she'd just made, because she has a little business making jewellery, and it had these 5 rings on it. So I just said, I'm gonna use that tomorrow night, because it's just serendipity that you've come in with the 5 rings, and I'm going to talk about these 5 things. So anyway, so just to share with people really what these 3 sets of 5 things are, and you might think you know, they're fairly obvious, but anyway, these are the things I try and weave into the walks. So first of all, 5 elements. So we often think of the 4 elements in terms of earth, water, air, and fire. But in different cultures and religions, you know, people would think about 5 elements, and the 5th one being space or voids. So and again, in different cultures and traditions, you know, it's seen that if you have an increased awareness of the elements, of these 5 elements, and the interaction between them, it will lead you to an understanding of the laws of nature. And given that we are part of nature and our lives are governed by the laws of nature, the more we understand these elements, the more we understand the processes that are going on, you know, within our own lives, but also within nature. And I suppose, you know, again, in different cultures and traditions, the elements would be, you know, very symbolic. I think Susan was saying, you know, water was one of the things which she found calming. So, you know, and it would be associated with flow. You know, earth would be, you know, the element of the earth would be, I suppose, associated with grounding, air with life force, fire with transformation. So there are different times in our lives when different elements will have more significance to us. And sometimes when you're out walking, you'll be more aware of one element than another, and it's sometimes because it has more relevance to your life at that particular moment. So the next 5, so that's the first 5, set of 5. The second set of 5 is the 5 senses. So sight, touch, smell, taste, and hearing. So, and again, this comes back to being mindful and being in the moment. So, you know, the more senses that we can trigger, you know, when we're in nature, usually the more memorable that experience becomes. But most importantly, the more it brings you into the moment. And we can use all 5 of our senses to experience all of the 5 elements. So we think of the example of fire. So we can see fire, we can see the beauty in fire. We can touch it, we can appreciate the warmth and hopefully not get burnt. You know, the smell of wood smoke is so emotive. The taste of something that's been cooked on a fire is so different. You know, a jacket potato done in an open fire is just so different from one done in the oven. And the sound of fire. You know, so you think of any of the 5 elements, and you think, you know, we can use our 5 senses to experience all of these, and that you know, again brings you into closer understanding, close connection with them. And then the other 5, which is something which I'm sure everyone will have heard about, which is the 5 ways to well-being, which is an internationally recognised, I suppose, model in terms of mental health and benefiting positive mental health. And those 5 ways to well-being are connecting with people, being active, taking notice of the things around us, continuing to learn, and also giving. So when I'm designing activities with young people in nature, I try and incorporate all of those things into it. So first of all, if we're going out as a group, we're connecting with each other. We're active, we're outside. We have exercises which make us notice things. And again, not just by sight, but through all of our senses. So different activities to do that. There's always knowledge that can be imparted, within the group about the things that they've seen. And if the activity can include creating something, then that can then be given to someone else within the group or to somebody when they go home. So if you can weave those 5 things in, along with the 5 elements, and use all of your 5 senses, it can really bring you into nature. It can bring you into the moment. And compare that with a walk that you go on when your mind's just so full of stuff. You're walking through the most beautiful glen, and you don't appreciate any of it because your head's still thinking about, or your phone's going, or you're not there. So I think it takes a conscious effort to really be there, and the more you can be there, the more you'll benefit, and the more peace you'll derive.
Lovely. Yay. So do you know what time it is now?
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. So here, will I stop sharing? Just aware, will we put this on the view?